I was at Everest Base Camp on May 8, 1999, when 3 Ukrainians stood triumphantly on the summit, the first to do so from their country. Within hours, that triumph would turn tragic. During the descent, the team ran into severe weather, and one of their teammates, Vasil Kopitko, disappeared through the Cornice Ridge, never to be found. And we watched through a telescope as the other two, Vladislav Terziul and Volodymyr Horbach, climbing without bottled oxygen, struggled just to keep moving. And that morning, we learned that one of those two was in a fight for his life. I was standing with my friends, Jake Norton, Tap Richards, Jochen Hemleb, and the Ukrainian expedition leader, Valentin Simonenko, gathered around a telescope at 17,000 feet, staring at a fight for survival 12 miles and 12,000 feet away on the northeast ridge. 3 men had gone up, 2 were still up there, not far below the summit, and we would watch as they would stand and take a few steps and then sit down, pounding their legs to try to keep warm. They would stand up, shuffle a few more steps, and sit back down. In the thin air of the death zone, it felt like they were barely moving. Later that afternoon, we left base camp and moved up to advanced base camp, where other teams were mobilizing people from their expeditions to try to assist in a rescue of the man who was fighting for his life. And there was one thought that gnawed at all of us. With each hour that it took to reach him was another hour closer to death. By the time we got to advanced base camp, the picture was much clearer, and it wasn't good. The climber, Volodymyr Horbach, he was near death, too weak to descend on his own, and by now the darkness had fallen. The window to pull him out was closing. Teams started moving. A few of our guys went with some Sherpa and climbers and Sherpa from Russell Bryce's team to meet the climber and to lower him down the fixed ropes. My role was small, but in a rescue like this, numbers matter. Each person guarantees that when one person becomes too tired to shoulder the load, another can step in. And when I finally saw him at the base of the North Col, laying back in the litter, his eyes closed, I remember thinking that he might already be dead. His blood pressure was something like 50/50. I didn't even know that was possible. He was delirious and constantly kept trying to knock the oxygen mask off of his face, the very thing that was helping him stay alive. And I also remember worrying, and this is gross, that his nose was so frostbitten that I thought it was going to fall off. A rotating team of 10 or 12 of us kept moving him down the glacier, and his summit teammate, Vladislav Terziul, who would go on to become the first Ukrainian to summit all 14 8,000-meter peaks, he seemed impervious to the ordeal that he'd just survived. I kept asking him if I could take his backpack, and he flatly refused. He was certainly operating at a whole different level. Every movement of this team working in unison to carry the gentleman down the glacier was a negotiation between physics and altitude and time, trying to move quickly without dropping him or falling or tripping. He was barely hanging on, and when we got to advanced base camp, there was a small medically trained team in a large tent. Many of us were certain that he would not survive the night. Lately, I've been sharing a ton of stories about climbers who have gotten into all sorts of predicaments high up in the mountains. And it's not until you're actually in trouble that you realize how important it is to plan ahead. I realized that when I got cholera one time at Annapurna Base Camp, and I basically was in big trouble, but fortunately, the expedition leader had a med kit that was completely built out. But when you're in the comfort of your home and you know that there's something you need to take care of, it's pretty easy to procrastinate finding a good doctor to have a checkup, to look after something that's been bugging you for a long time. So if you can just take a very short break with me, I've got something really important that could very well be important to you as well. I want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, ZocDoc. ZocDoc helps you quickly find the right doctor for your needs. It's really fast and all online. ZocDoc makes it easy to check that doctor's appointment off your list. ZocDoc's a free website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors where you can find the right doctor for you. It actually lets you see doctors' appointment openings. And once there, you can choose a time that works for you, and it lets you book it instantly with a click. ZocDoc has more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, whether you're looking for dermatology, dentistry, primary care, eye care, or one of the other 200 plus specialties offered on ZocDoc. You can easily search by specialty or symptom to build the care team that is right for you. ZocDoc is the one-stop shop for all your healthcare needs. And get this, it's completely free. And I am going to admit, I told you I'm a good procrastinator. It's one of my strengths, and I have been putting it off. So I look forward to going under the hood and finding a doctor's appointment that I've been looking to take care of for a long time. I need a full blood palate workup so I can see about my health, especially here toward the end of winter. So stop procrastinating and check out ZocDoc.com/Everest Mystery. There is a link in the description below to find and book a top-rated doctor instantly today. Use ZocDoc and make the right call to the right doctor. That rescue of Volodymyr Horbach required roughly 24 people and 36 to 48 hours of constant movement. Getting Volodymyr to Advanced Base Camp, and then a whole other team mobilized to move him from Advanced Base Camp all the way down to Base Camp. And on the north side of the mountain, there are no commercial helicopter evacuations. And without military or government orders, nothing flies. And so from Base Camp, he would still need to make his way in a truck or a car all the way down to the Nepal border, where a helicopter would meet him and fly him to a hospital in Kathmandu. The odds were stacked up against him at every step, but Volodymyr, he survived. But that's really not the end of the story, because while we were doing everything possible to save him, another teammate, Vasil, had already vanished high upon the mountain. And no amount of heroism, no amount of strength, no amount of try a little harder would ever bring him home to his family. And that's the part of Mount Everest that we don't really often talk about that much. On Everest, above a certain invisible line, a rescue isn't just hard. Sometimes it's literally impossible. And so we're going to pull that apart, the physics, the logistics, and the ethics of why sometimes people are impossible to save, even when other climbers are just a few hundred meters away. On most mountains, when something goes wrong, there's a mental picture that we carry. You make a call, a rescue team is organized, and in extreme cases, a helicopter is summoned and that person is put on that helicopter and flown directly to a hospital. Problem solved, right? But on Everest, that picture breaks above a certain line. Roughly 6,400 meters, about 21,000 feet below that line, helicopters sometimes can land or hover or at least operate within a safety margin. And on the south side in Nepal, there's even regular helicopter traffic during the busy season. But above that line, going up toward the area known as the death zone, the air is so thin that rotor blades simply can't generate enough lift. Engines cannot generate enough power to safely fly or carry additional weight. It's the basic physics that every helicopter pilot lives and breathes on. At sea level, a helicopter's rotors are pushing against thick, dense air. It generates lift. 6, 7, 8,000 meters, the air density drops to a fraction of that, and the blades are spinning in almost nothing. Pilots call this the service ceiling, the maximum altitude where a helicopter can operate within a safety margin. And that ceiling is not defined by courage, it's defined by physics. So that's the first brutal truth about high-altitude rescue. Once you cross that invisible line, you've left the age of aviation. And that leads to the second problem. That even if you can send people up, the math of getting a dying climber down can get ugly very fast. So imagine you're at 8,000 meters in the death zone, healthy, well acclimatized, feeling good, bottled oxygen, making your way slowly up the mountain. You have clothes completely covering your head. You can't hear things the way you normally would, and almost your entire face is covered by a mask, and then your eyes with goggles. And now add a climber who can't walk on their own, a litter, or a makeshift sled for that climber, fixed ropes, rock steps, exposed traverses, wind, cold, oxygen-starved brains, and on the south side of Everest in particular, dozens sometimes on particular days of climbers who are completely inexperienced, with no ability to be of much assistance whatsoever, in fact, actually clogging up any opportunity for progress up or down because so many people are clogged in one small place. And so if the injured climber is 1,000 meters or so, or 500 meters above the place of safety where you're endeavoring to bring that climber, we're looking at potentially 20 or more hours of work of a team of people to bring that person down. And so it's not just one hero endeavoring to do the work. Usually it's 4 at an absolute minimum, 8, 10, 12 different people usually required to make this all happen in unison. Very often, those are the Sherpas who would do that work, the unsung heroes of Mount Everest and the 8,000 meter peaks. And remember, Sherpa or not, each one of those requires oxygen, food, and fuel of their own, and their own willingness to save another person's life. In 1999, we had some of the strongest people in the world, let alone on the mountain, partaking in that rescue. Sherpas, experienced Western climbers, and extremely tough Ukrainians who had grown up in the Carpathians and the Caucasus Mountains. And it still took everything just to move that one man down the mountain. So next, let's take a look at what it means when that line is crossed through one of the most infamous stories on Mount Everest, the 1996 disaster. Rob Hall, Doug Hansen, and that a rescue, by the time it got as bad as it got, had already become impossible. And so before we go there, there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about. The difficulty of knowing in that environment whether a climber is living or dead. Sometimes a climber who survives will lie as if dead for hours. We all know the story of Beck Weathers in 1996. Many people left him for dead, looked him right in the face and determined he was already dead. And the next morning he stood up and walked into camp to the shock of everybody. And then there's Lincoln Hall in 2006. He was left for dead by several of his Sherpa teammates. And the next morning, when Dan Mazur and his guided team were moving up the mountain, there was Lincoln Hall seated upright, waving at them, saying hello, even making a joke. That was after being left for dead only hours before. So essentially, those people who are encountering a person perhaps in need of a rescue, it is not always clear whether they are living or dead and whether a rescue is necessary at all. And so high on the mountain in the death zone, where the thin air is putting every person on the edge of life or death, it can blur the ability to make a judgment one way or the other. And so a climber who is lying there motionless doesn't appear to be breathing. There are no vital signs that can be easily detected. Sometimes their hands will be gloveless, outstretched, frozen solid. And an untrained climber without medical training won't understand that severe hypoxia, exhaustion, and hypothermia can completely shut a body down, wherein experienced climbers can mistake that person for being dead. And as history has shown, famously with Beck Weathers in 1996, a person left for dead can rally, regain movement, and stagger back toward life. So let's take that idea of rescue mathematics and apply it to one of the best known disasters on Everest, the 1996 storm. May 10th, 1996, Hall's team climbs from the South Col, Camp 4, toward the summit. Turnaround time is 2 p.m., no matter what. Now, Rob Hall and Doug Hansen reportedly reached the summit after 4, many have said 4:30. When you summit at 4 p.m., you're starting down as the sun is beginning to set on the horizon. Darkness will be around the corner, and the cold is coming with a vengeance. And on this particular day, a storm was bearing down on the mountain. 70-plus mile-an-hour winds, the temperatures perilously low, and visibility collapsing to almost nothing. And then somewhere near the south summit, around 8,750 meters, Doug Hansen collapses. His supplemental oxygen is completely gone. And then Rob Hall stays with him. And then soon Hall's own regulator ices over. And so suddenly the guide, Rob Hall, one of the strongest people on the mountain, is now also fighting for his life. Now pause the story right there and look at the equation. The altitude, 8,750 meters. The weather, full blizzard. Time, night. We have one unconscious and one severely compromised. We know that no helicopter is going to make it up there, so the only option is to send more human beings up into the storm from the South Col. So by the time the scale of this disaster is into full-blown mode, the potential rescue of Hall and Hansen is essentially off the table. And in the end, Hansen died near the south summit, and Hall, frostbitten and immobilized, somehow figured out a way to survive through the night, and he found himself on a small ledge below the south summit, radioed through the night, spoke to his pregnant wife. Heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And so for this video, Rob Hall is the case study of a brutal truth multiplied by many on the mountain that day, that there's a point where a rescue mission is just a second accident waiting to happen. And one of the perfect examples in Everest history of that taking place is in 2006 with David Sharp, who sat down exhausted, motionless in the small cave near a body of a climber, Swang Paljor, referred to as Green Boots. And over 30 or 40 people walked by David Sharp that night, many of them thinking or assuming that he had already died. And so again, it's really easy to make a decision from sea level and make a judgment on all those people, but you have to understand what altitude does to the human brain. Above 8,000 meters, most people are in what guides can quietly call the zombie zone. Now, Russell Bryce has talked with me about this openly and in some documentaries. In 2006, his Sherpas actually tried to help David Sharp. They gave him oxygen, but they also had to make a call. Is this a man that we can actually bring down the mountain, or somebody who's effectively already dead? And so from inside the mask, in that cave, it's the comparable risk principle in action. You can't trade 3 or 4 living, breathing people for one man who's functionally gone. And in 1999, when Volodymyr was reached, he was responsive enough, very, very perilously close to death, but the equation favored giving it a try, and further, his Ukrainian teammates were not going to be stopped in getting him down that mountain. And it paid off. David Sharp, as many of you know, was not so fortunate. So where does that leave us? We have 3 stories now. The Ukrainian climber whose nose was literally starting to fall apart in front of us with such a low blood pressure. It's miraculous that he survived the night, let alone went on to survive, completely recovered. He lived because he was able to be reached at that point in time, and there were many teams willing and able to mobilize to participate in that rescue. And then you have a legendary guide stranded in a storm so high that any attempt to save him would have just created more loss of life. And then a young Brit in a cave who was passed by dozens, not because they were monsters or unethical, but because in the death zone, almost no one is fully human anymore. Below around 6,400 meters, the rules of rescue is more black and white. It's easier to get a helicopter in there and mobilize teams of people who aren't under such undue stress and weather conditions. But above that, above 6,400 meters into the death zone, it becomes a knife-edge equation. Weather, time, strength, numbers. Sometimes it tips on the side of life, and then sometimes it doesn't. Above 8,000 meters in the true death zone, the rules change completely. Helicopters are out, ground teams are already at their own physiological limit. Rescue is possible, but highly unlikely. In that world, the question isn't, why didn't they rescue him? That's often the wrong question to ask. The better question to ask is, at what point did a rescue become mathematically and ethically impossible, even if the people up there wanted it to happen? What do you think? I'd love to see your thoughts in the comment section below. And we have tons of videos that cover rescues and the 1996 tragedy. Be sure to check the description below for links to some of those. Some have good endings and some not good endings. Hey, so if you're still here and haven't yet subscribed to this channel, would you take a moment to click that subscribe button? And please consider joining this channel. There's tons of exclusive content in there, hour after hour of exclusive content. Check it out, will you? Also, over on everestmystery.com, we've got some great merch, hats, t-shirts have just been added, hoodies, lots for you to sport your favorite YouTube channel. And more than anything, by far, the most important thing you do a good deed, don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.